Hello and welcome. We are so excited to welcome you to Living Cities Earth experience. Please enjoy the next few minutes, and we hope that this video and the ideas from our speakers will change your life to the better. Listen carefully. What particularly talks to you? What might have a chance to change your life and lives of people around you? Also, life of your place and our planet. We believe that you, the leaders of positive change, are those who define the future. So let's work together. And thank you for coming. Before we move on, Pavel, thank you very much for joining us. You're also on a busy schedule and traveling worldwide. I lose track of, are you in Egypt or in Italy or in the Netherlands or in Turkey? So where are you today?
I am somewhere, I think, close to Paul. I am also in Holland, in Amersfoort right now.
Well, Paul is in South Africa, so you're a little bit
okay. So same, no, all right, it's different hemisphere, but still more or less the same time zone.
Time zone, exactly. Well, thank you for joining us from the Netherlands, a beautiful country, definitely one of the leaders, in my perspective, in developing a sort of balanced way of city life. People who went to Amsterdam, they might remember there is a beautiful statue of Spinoza, the philosopher, Baruch Spinoza. It's right in the center next to City Hall. And there is his saying, he said that the purpose of any government is to support freedom of people. And to me, it's such a powerful statement. And Spinoza and Socrates and many sort of famous people throughout the world history, they thought about the future. They thought about the present, they were active, but they also thought about the future. And one of the reasons we wanted to invite you, and thank you for taking this sort of invitation, is because you're a very famous person in what considered to be the study of the future, like the future's foresight. So could you briefly, maybe 2-3 minutes, share your path and how you started to think about the future and how you are working with other people, institutions, cities and regions with their ways of understanding what the future holds?
Thank you, Lev, for asking this. So first of all, I was, I think, quite passionate about different aspects of the future since I was a kid. And one of my early interests was that I was very inspired by Soviet images of what the future will be, the space travel, getting to other planets, and all that imagery, and renowned figures like Konstantin Tsiolkovsky that were envisaging what they called the space species. Humans becoming space species, moving beyond our planet, becoming cosmic, galactical, and so on. And I felt like I want to bring this future forward. And actually, my journey then was that, of course, Soviet Union collapsed. And we all sort of tried to discover our pathways in that collapsed society. And I became an economist. And years later, I felt like one of the things that is actually missing is people are only focusing on the short-term decision-making. They don't dream, they don't inspire each other, and they are always missing the point, so to say. The moment of awakening for me when I was an economist and I saw how the neoliberal model collapsed during the 2008 crisis, and people stopped to believe that it's actually going to work, that it's not going to bring prosperity. And after that, there was like a surge of different experiments around the future of education, future of cities, many things. And around that time, I felt like we really need to bring long-term thinking into leadership. And that's why I started work with education, because I think education really programs people for the future. It sort of opens up their perspective. It sort of challenges their current worldview. It prepares them for different reality. And same story goes for cities. Actually, if you shape the city for the future, then you kind of open up for next generations to come, the opportunities, the new topics and so on. And because of that, I started developing methods that are using this kind of collective insight building, because I believe that part of this evolution is that we are not only individuals making choices about future, we are also collectives, we are also movements, we are also organizations, we are nations that are making the decision. So we need to awaken our collective intelligence and our collective consciousness to do it properly. And my work with these different forms of future thinking is not individual future thinking. It's only can be done in communities, in groups, in movements that are creating visions together. Only then the vision can become reality, if it's done collectively.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for this short introduction. I really had hard time visualizing you as an economist, because I know you from a very different period of your life. But thank you for really sharing your perspective, and I agree that it's very important.
I also find hard, Lev, to realize that you once were a manager in the ING Bank.
Right,
but you're not now a banker at all.
It's very funny. But one of the things you mentioned is that bringing this long-term perspective and thinking into leadership and the work that leaders do around the world is extremely important. And one of the leaders, the evolutionary leaders, as we call them, was Buckminster Fuller. And to me, you were the person who introduced me to Buckminster. And I remember that we had this Earth Day celebration maybe 6 or maybe 7 years ago, and you suggested let's celebrate the idea that Buckminster brought into the humanity, which is the Spaceship Earth, that we are all part of one crew, one team, on a spaceship which flies through the, the space. We call it our planet Earth, but it is a spaceship in a way. And if you could spend maybe next couple of minutes just sharing how did you come to learn about Buckminster Fuller, his work, his ideas, just a small tribute to this outstanding individual.
Yeah, actually, the more I know about Buckminster Fuller, the more I'm interested in his work, because he was an amazing architect, system scientist who actually started to write about things such as regenerative economy decades before it even came into people's mind. And he sort of set on his path in 1920s and 1930s to create, we could call him, let's say, the philosophy of protopia, which I really like, this idea of not focusing on future that is utopian and never reached, idealistic, or dystopian, the one that we're afraid, but really on something that is achievable, but at the same time optimistic. And I think Buckminster Fuller, he tried to kind of create these principles for his own life, for his own work that can manifest that future. And because of that, he used architecture as like one of the vehicles to do this this practice. But he was talking about the idea we now would call acupuncture points of civilization. He used the metaphor of a trim tab. So trim tab is this little thing that is at the very end of a ship that helps steer big ships. So when it switches, a huge ship starts to move. And really, we can think of acupuncture points and people that are discovering them as trim tabs. So Buckminster Fuller said, I am the trim tab, in the sense that I'm trying to cultivate things that are very little now, but they can make a big shift. And I think that's the idea of bringing revolutionary ideas. One other quote that really inspires me from him is that we don't need to fight existing paradigms. We need to create new paradigms that make the existing one obsolete. So the idea that we actually need to look into paradigm shift as the invitation to create something completely radically new. And that's why I'm interested in his work. Of course, the main thing he's known for is these famous geodesic domes and this particular kind of architecture, which is a little bit of a crazy architecture in my mind. But I think he's more interested as a thinker. He's more interesting as someone who offers a new perspective. There is a big fan group that exists in the world that sort of follows Buckminster Fuller work. For example, one of the things he was doing was a so-called world game, which was actually based around the question, how can we make through spontaneous collaboration, which is basically like market collaboration, but also all kinds of collaborative forms, in the shortest time possible, as an economy and a society that works for 100% of population of the planet, like human population.
Yes.
And I think this kind of question shows the perspective that was really missing, especially in his time, because he was offering something radical. And that radicality is actually something that I'm deeply passionate about. And so I discovered through a number of common acquaintances, Buckminster Fuller Institute, which is actually paying tribute to his work. I met some of the people that are leaders of this institute. We started doing some stuff together. And one of the ideas was they started this Spaceship Earth Day. And I thought, like, why not have a Spaceship Earth Day global? So they had one in the US, and we had a satellite Spaceship Earth Day in Russia. And of course, now it's a global Spaceship Earth Day. And I don't even know if the Institute knows that the Spaceship Earth Day is happening today with Living Cities Earth. But I think it's important that the legacy lives on and it's not concentrated in one single point.
Exactly. What's very interesting about Buckminster Fuller, I was reading about his biography maybe a week ago, and he was a captain of a military or maybe paramilitary ship in the United States about 100 years ago in the early 20th century. And after he left service and went to his civil life, he had a family and he was quite poor. So despite his military career, he was a poor man. He really didn't have enough money to feed his family. Even maybe there was some, job market difficulties. I'm not sure. But his experience was that he was passionate about leading a decent life, but he couldn't afford very simple things. And he was thinking about he was sort of suicidal at some points because he couldn't understand how he as a father and as a gentleman could really live in such a condition. And why I'm talking about this, we talk about leadership. So he had a choice basically at a difficult, challenging moment in his time. He could go down, right, and either commit suicide or become, an addict of alcohol or drugs or whatever. But he had a certain powerful experience, and he decided that whatever are the circumstances, whether he has money or he doesn't have enough money, whether he has sort of respect in the society or not, but he will try to show what a single individual could do if he is launching on this, serving the world, improving the world path. And from a very regular person, he became really a luminary of a planetary scale, whose work influences development of many, many people and countries, even 100 years after he's gone. So thank you for your heart, Ferial from Scotland. And to me, Buckminster is not only a great thought leader, but he's also a true evolutionary leader, because through his work, without any resources, he really made a big impact on how people live today and will be living in the future. So Buckminster, wherever you are, thank you for all the
And I would emphasize the idea that he had in general, which was informing one of the principles of his work, which was doing more with less. It's about finding that acupuncture point. It's about discovering some things that we think are not possible today, but will be possible as let's say we shift to a different reality. And part of the story is that one man, one person, one human can be that trim tab, that point of inflection for the transformation of civilization.
Exactly. Well, a quick question to you, because you are researching, and I know that you have conducted workshops and seminars and foresight sessions for companies, countries, cities, and regions. When people start thinking about their future, do they take what's called a victim mentality perspective, or do you always see people taking this leadership and being sort of the active decision maker? How do you see people work with this worldwide?
It's interesting. I would say that victim position is very common, especially when we start talking about technological changes. So, for example, in our project called School of Evolutionary Leadership, about a week ago, we conducted a conversation about the future of AI and its impact on the society, the human life, and so on. And it's like a series of conversations. We just sort of were mapping the field of what is important. Maybe 90% of conversation was dedicated to their different risks. So people felt like they were sharing how vulnerable they were around this topic of AI. Maybe not 90%, but it was like the majority of conversation was around it. The threats, how it is going to control. Now, after that conversation, I put into the channel of our school, I put a questionnaire, like a poll, inviting people to vote what will they want to continue discussing. And one opportunity was to discuss how we can protect ourselves from these risks. The other opportunity was to discuss what would be the positive implications of using AI and how we can learn to become more proactive in using it, in empowering ourselves, in enhancing ourselves, and changing our leadership style. And there was overwhelming request to discuss that. So actually, when it comes to discussing the future, people begin with a victimization of different kind, with all kinds of fears. They project everything, all unfulfilled, let's say, hopes and everything. They only complain. But it's a phase of conversation, in my experience. It's where the conversation begins, because we start with frustration. We are not satisfied with how the world is. And that's why we need to talk about the future. And of course, we also know that part of the story is to accept the reality and be here and now. But part of the story as leaders is not only to accept, but to challenge. And of course, we know that there is a healthy balance between things we can accept and things we cannot accept, and things we can do something about and things we cannot do something about. So finding that balance is actually the art of life. And I think part of the story is that some things we can change, and many things we can change. And so if we move from this victimization, let's say, when we feel that we are just overwhelmed by these trends and we have to adapt, or we have to I don't know, evade, or we have to stop them. Instead of that, we look into this as an opportunity for transformation, and a positive one, something that allows us to grow, but to become more beautiful, more inspiring, to lead our life as a beautiful piece of art, basically. That's something is totally different story. And that's where I think the evolutionary leadership happens, because the leadership is, first of all, leadership of yourself. How can you master yourself? It's not about telling others what to do. It's how do you master yourself? Now, if you master yourself, then you can go into and help others and empower them to do something.
I totally agree, and I immediately think about how different people are able to operate in what's called uncertainty, right? Different levels of uncertainty. 100 or 200 years ago, many people lived in a village. Everything was very clear. They had their, parents, grandparents, some friends. They would stay their whole life in one place. Most of people, right? Like in Switzerland, they had those cantons, and they would rarely really move between them. But today, everything has changed. We have informational openness and global sort of informational society. You, for example, you move on a sort of weekly basis between different countries, and many people, maybe not so much, but still they move around. And there is this term VUCA bunny world, right? The VUCA is what does it stand for? Do you remember?
Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous.
Right. And now it's even...
Bunny is brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible, something like this.
Right. So it's amazing. I remember my grandparents...
but it's basically just facets of the same thing to me.
I agree, but I remember I'm 49, so I remember my childhood 40 years ago. Everything was so stable. It's amazing. It was very, very different. And for many people, I guess it's a big challenge, right? Whether they live in the city or in a village or travel, but life became different than what it was 30 or 40 years ago. So my question before we go to evolutionary leadership, but how do people survive psychologically in the world where things are not as stable and as clear, and there is so much anxiety and stress levels are growing? How people could deal with it, even in their personal lives?
There is an interesting quote from a modern spiritual teacher I really enjoy, Eckhart Tolle, who wrote Power of Now, and has this interesting principle about being here and now. And Eckhart says that if you find ways to be comfortable with uncertainty, infinite opportunities open up in your life. So actually, one thing to say is that uncertainty was always there. But we have entered into the stage of civilizational, actually, development. It's not the first time. I think people during the First World War also experienced something like this. But it's one of those times that when society begins to crumble down, right? So if we just imagine how people felt in Russia 100 years ago when a revolution happened, when civil war happened, when Bolsheviks started to impose all kinds of things, and it was changing every 5-10 years. I don't think it was much less uncertain than it is now. I think maybe even more. Then we entered into some period of stability, which was post-World War II stability. And then again, some reshaping began to happen. And I think if we look at the bigger scale of hundreds or maybe thousands of years, we will see, yes, something started to happen around the time of what they call industrial evolution and so on, when this period of growing acceleration, growing capacity of human civilization, growing population, growing connectedness, growing wealth, but also growing environmental footprint on planet Earth. So everything is growing exponentially. And this means that the next decades will be growing turbulence, growing uncertainty. It's just inevitable. There is no way to stabilize again until we redefine our way of being. Now, I'm telling this story to actually answer your question. So first thing is we need to learn to live with this uncertainty and accept it, that it's a fact of life, that stability is gone. So it's a different mentality. If you're, let's say, if you're in the fluid society where things are not as stable as it used to be, you just adopt different strategies. Doesn't mean you die. It's just you adopt different strategies. For example, you learn to operate on different principles that you don't expect external structures to provide you stability and guarantee. You build up resilience, inner resilience. You build up something that allows you to, stabilize things within yourself, recognize that maybe your stability lies with different things like your own personal value system, your own choices in life, your partners, your family, and so on. So things that are, let's say, much more reliable, but that's where you need to invest yourself. That's where you need to, for example, it's the time where communities of like-minded people become important again, where this opportunity for this fluid society starts to bring together people that are like-minded, that can build up these global networks. I really like that this image of living cities Earth has all these connected networks, and that's what we need. Like some people use this metaphor of imaginal cells, like in the butterfly, a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. There are these cells that already know about the butterfly, and they kind of begin connecting together, and that's what we're doing now. So the stability, the new stability, is not in the past, it's in the future. And that's where, so per first part of the answer is, well, maybe zero part of the answer is that yes, it's very hard for people, extremely hard. The first part of the answer is to make it easier, we need to accept this as a new reality instead of fighting it. If we try to fight it, if we try to wait out until this instability is over, it won't be over. So people who said, okay, COVID, let's wait until it ends. Now things will go back again. No. Then the war happens in Ukraine. Then other things, all things that build up on top of another. I'm sure that in 2 years, there'll be another big surprise that everybody will be, what's going on? What is it? But you just have to accept this will continue to happen. And in the end, because we're talking about evolutionary transformation that is needed on a global scale to adapt our humanity to the new demands of planet Earth, let's put it this way, everybody, like 100% of population will be affected. and because of this, it means that this instability, this fluidity will continue. Now, if we are comfortable with this, if we accept it, and if we start to see, okay, where is this evolution leading us to? What does it point to? And to answer to that question, we need to look into some fundamental principles of what is that evolutionary challenge. And maybe I prepared the presentation, but maybe I'll show just 2 slides out of it.
Oh, I love your presentations. I wanted to ask you to show some.
Yeah, I actually have quite a few slides, but I'm thinking I really like a conversation, so maybe we just carry on. But I'll bring a couple of slides into our conversation. So the idea is that we need to really start sensing what is emerging and bring that into the present. Is it okay if I show something? Yeah?
Yes, please do. I was about to ask you, do you have some slides you normally share? They're so informative.
Quite a few, and maybe I'll come back to some interesting slides at the end also, because I wanted to show you a couple of things too, but let me show you these ones. So first thing, in terms of this uncertainty, which is more than just uncertainty, is that we need to recognize that the crisis we are facing is it's actually some call it polycrisis, because it's actually a range of different interconnected crises that operate on different scales. For some of these crises are here now. Some of them are going to unfold throughout the next decades and will worsen with time. Some of them are not evident, but they will happen in, let's say, 20, 30 years massively. So if we look at the effect of this crisis combined, we will see something like this. So we will see that the negative impact is going to increase in the next decades because these crises are aggravating. And actually, around the middle of 21st century, at least as far as we can see, the risk is the highest. And either we sort it out and find ways to overcome it, or it kind of washes off our civilization. And it's not only the climate crisis. I think the climate crisis is just one of the facets. Just to show you this one, I think we need to look at this picture, which is known as planetary boundaries framework, which talks about 9 critical dimensions of what are the conditions for survival of our species on the planet Earth. And as we know, on most of these aspects, we are already passing through the threshold. And threshold is actually the question: can we operate indefinitely if we create this kind of impact on planetary systems, right? So, for example, if different species die out at this range, does it mean that potentially some kind of sixth extinction kind of event is happening? What is happening to the soil, which is degrading at a terrible speed? What is happening to acidification of oceans, and so on and so on? So the dynamics is very bad, let's say. Well, Not funny, but funny.
Could I ask you a question, a very important one about
Yeah.
the prior slide?
Please.
In the last couple of years, really, I hear from some of the scientists, but also sort of Earth enthusiasts, people who are concerned about the future of the planet, of course. So they say we're past this point when we could really change things. So we are very near this point. It's in 2 years, in 5 years, and I don't know, right? I don't have full information about it. So I'm a relatively intelligent person, but not excessively intelligent, and I don't study this subject myself. So I tend to keep a sort of a positive perspective, in a sense, not that everything is good and we don't need to act. Of course not. We do need to act on all scales, in our homes, in our communities, on a global scale. But still, I personally don't feel, like we're in a total crisis and we need just to commit suicide, right? But we need to look for ways to change, right? We need to look for ways to cooperate in a different way. And I know that we are very slow as species to do it on a large scale. So my question to you, outside of all the scientific research, which is important, but more on a sort of managerial leadership level, what are the ways to bring humanity to awareness and then to action and really changing our ways? How to do it?
Okay, I'll answer this question. Let me first say, in terms of answering the first part, is how bad the situation is. And I think let's say if, for example, someone has a lethal kind of disease like a cancer. We know that cancer has certain mortality rate, but it's not 100% mortality rate. And we know that people, even with very, let's say, serious level of development of cancer, can have what is known in science as spontaneous remission. But in fact, the spontaneous remission always, I would say 100%, happens not randomly. It happens because people dramatically change their lifestyle.
Exactly.
They change their mindset, they change their lifestyle, and that actually including the psychological aspects. Like, for example, a person starts doing something that she or he always wanted to do. And then that kind of changes everything. So recognizing that this is where I'm bringing this, Lev, we are in the center of evolutionary crisis. And evolutionary crisis, to me, means that we are in a deadly situation. And Margaret Mead, who introduced this idea, introduced it in, I'm sorry to say, in 1960s. It was over 60 years ago when she started talking about it, and she wasn't the only one. Now, 60 years is like a lifetime of some people. Maybe me and you are younger than that, right? So when we were born, we were already in the situation of an evolutionary crisis. We are living all our life in an evolutionary crisis. We think it's okay, maybe that's just normal. No, it's not. But if we think that this is the situation, the evolutionary crisis is like, for complex system, evolutionary crisis is an invitation for a transition. So when the species is in evolutionary crisis, it means that it will either die out or transform. When a biosphere is in evolutionary crisis, every time evolutionary crisis led to massive extinction, but life never ended. It actually rebooted itself, and then it led to massive expansion, the next stage of evolutionary development. So I think we're on the threshold of a big transition. And the question for us is whether we as species are going to be part of that transition. We as civilization are going to be part of that transition. This is the invitation to become what we call evolutionary leaders, right? So evolutionary leaders, to me, are people who recognize that this is a reality that is happening. It's not somewhere in the future. And actually, evolutionary leaders are, to me, people that are taking this as personal challenge. They're not thinking if someone is going to sort it out for them, like Buckminster Fuller. They need to start taking this and seeing their own life as a model of that transition. And then we need to see that the reshaping of civilization is not going to happen in the areas of technologies. It's not going to be artificial intelligence or metaverse or whatever to sort it out. It's going to be how we perceive the world, our consciousness, what are our priorities, how we communicate, how we learn, the culture, yeah, the governance, the economy. It's where the change is happening. So actually, if we want us as species to be continuing our life, it's an evolutionary invitation for those who want our species to be, maybe transformed species, to be part of the future. It's an invitation to discover how we can be part of that alignment with planet Earth, with everything. And maybe the last slide I'm going to show, and then we can switch back to our conversation, Dev, is actually this one. Is that if we want evolutionary, like this future to happen, we need to become, I call them agents of the future or leaders of the future. It's actually, we need to model this here and now. We need to start seeing that we are basically becoming the anchor of that future reality. So the next 30 years is like a time of choices where people are discovering how to live differently, how to raise their kids differently, how to produce food differently, produce energy, trade with each other, enjoy each other, whatever, have sex, many things. So it's like all aspects of our life have to be rethought to cities. Actually, that's why I think cities are so important, is because cities are like the model of all of this. It's like the concentration, like a fractal, right?
Yep.
And maybe also here I want to say that we need to recognize that we are not citizens, we are planetizens, right? We are all part, bringing back the idea of Spaceship Earth, we are all part of this complex system. And I think this is where I'm a little bit challenge. I think it was okay in the time of Buckminster Fuller to say that we need an operating guide for Spaceship Earth, but now I'm a little bit challenging that. I think it's not, we are at the steering wheel, like Enterprise, spaceship flying through space, we're making decisions. No, we are just one of elements of this very complex thing where like blood cells or neuron cells of an organism that is much bigger than us. So I think it's not for only us to decide, but it's for this big organism, which is a planet, which is, I think, it's not just conscious, it's super conscious in a way, I think. But we have not yet discovered that in our science, that it's super conscious. And if we are producing this, I think part of our crisis is not about the planet. It's about us recognizing that we need to become part of the planet.
Well, amazing. First of all, thank you for the amazing thoughts and sort of research results and information you are sharing. It's really powerful, and I think that with your personal energy, it really could change minds of many people and hearts as well, engaged hearts. I want to ask you a few questions, and we are moving into the subject of evolutionary leadership. We started with it, Buckminster, even Paul van Schaik before. But I also want to ask you questions in a very sort of simple way, like a regular person would ask you, even a child, as they say. So if I'm a child and I listen to you, and the pictures are beautiful, by the way, stunning. Some of them, I guess, are from artificial intelligence, perhaps, or some artists, I don't know. Thanks to them anyway. So when I listen to you, there is a big gap. There is my small life as a person, and there are about 8 billion people. I would say that people with a planetary vision is maybe less than 1%, my guess, maybe 5% today. So most of the people live in a very different frameworks and, worldviews. So they don't think about Earth, they don't think about planetizenship, etc. They think about how to, earn their living and how to meet a girl or a boy and how to take care of their children. So the level of awareness and sphere of interest for many people, I would say the predominant number of people, is definitely not at par with the challenges we face as a civilization. That leads me to the conclusion that while we try to, of course, invite, engage, teach, or learn together with all of the people, but we need to focus on those who are more ready to understand and to meet those challenges. I call them leaders of positive change, change makers, whatever, evolutionary leaders, of course. In your experience, again, you meet with people in many different cultures and countries. Who are those people? Why are they the way they are? And even more importantly, okay, they came to the point where they are today. But how do we join our energy, our forces, our resources to really make a collective impact to change things at the necessary, level of scale?
Well, first of all, I want to challenge the idea of separating people like who have the planetary view from those who don't. In fact, actually, if we don't engage literally everyone in this process of transition, like exactly like Fuller said, he said 100% of population, right? He didn't say 1% that will be chosen ones that will move to the next level. No, I think there is this idea of transhumanistic, kind of Silicon Valley idea that we will build robotic bodies for this selected few who will live as immortals and the rest can die out. I think this will not happen. Either we all die out or we kind of make that evolutionary shift. Part of the story is that recognizing that we are part of the planet, we are kind of cells in the body of that organism, is actually already making that shift. So for me, I'll come to your answer of your question, but I think it's actually the gradual, what I call ascending to the age of planetary consciousness, which needs to happen at the 100 level of population, not 1% of population. But of course, it starts with 1%. That ascending needs to happen on multiple levels. So one of them is intellectual level, which is that we all recognize. It's basically happening when you fly from one country to another, when you recognize that there is climate crisis and things like this. This is on the intellectual level. You begin to understand that you are part of the planet and you impacted. It also, by the way, is a source of frustration, that because a lot of people just start to see, wow, like there is climate crisis, it's so big, what can I do about it? I can do nothing, right? So a lot of people are frustrated. I'll come to that also in a moment because that's an important point. Now, the second level is action. It's about what do you do? What do you do on your daily basis? For example, what kind of choices you make when you buy food, or when you talk to your kids, or when you what kind of movies you watch, or how do you entertain yourself? I don't know, all of these things. How do you do sports? So these daily choices, daily actions, practices can embody the planetary consciousnness. And if we think like, how do you change your life to be planetizen? A lot of these things are very simple, but they're actually making a difference. And if a lot of people start practicing them, that's where the difference comes. So it's a kind of movement thing. And third thing, which is I think the most crucial, is about something that was also written in the chat, this idea of frequency. How do we embody this consciousness, right? So we kind of need to connect to it. And actually, a lot of spiritual traditions have that in their essence, like ranging from Taoist tradition, Christianity, the heart of Christ, Buddhism, so all shamanism, all of them actually have the facets of this. They didn't know about maybe Panchamama. Yes, it was known, but some of them did not speak about planetary consciousness. But I think they're kind of pointing to that level. And I really like the idea of Teilhard de Chardin, who actually spoke about the ascending to planetary consciousness connected with where actually the energy of Christ, the consciousness of Christ comes from. It's like the love for all, right? So it's actually that planetary level. So we can find the facets of this in every spiritual tradition. Now, 1% that is aware of this, or maybe I don't know how many percent are aware of this directly. I think many people have hints of it. Many more than just 1%. But those who practice it maybe are less than 1%, but that's not a problem, again, because I think that those who are doing it are also creating empowering systems. So they are kind of, if it's in the media, if it's in projects around us, so those who are aware is like imaginal cells that begin that awakening process for others. So I think it's more important, it's not the quantity that matters, it's more the quality of interaction and systems that continue this kind of building up of the new systems for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And last thing actually to say is, when I was talking about the action, I think that when we talk about planetary and global, this can be a little bit misleading, I think. Why is it misleading? Because it gives an impression that things are happening out there. And that's why I think that, for example, talking so much about the climate crisis was not a good idea. Actually, first of all, as we can see from the research of planetary boundaries, climate crisis is not the biggest crisis that is happening. Second thing, it's also the crisis that we can affect as individuals, the least of all. Actually, we can do, like, if I stop going out of my house, if I stop using electricity and so on, like if I stop all my carbon footprint, I will make zero impact on the climate crisis. Even if I'm an owner of a large company that maybe produces, I don't know, whatever, like a lot of pharma products or anything, even if I making my company zero carbon footprint, I will still make almost zero impact. That's a problem, actually, because nobody in the world, apart from the whole population, can impact the climate crisis. Now that creates a lot of frustration in people. But if we start recognizing that causes that lead to climate crisis, not a mission, it's actually something different. And first thing that leads to climate crisis is actually destruction of the biosphere, because climate is regulated by the biosphere. It's known for the last 50 years. James Lovelock was the first to introduce it, but it's actually the living organism, the community of living organism is the one that is stabilizing the climate. Now, if we start thinking, how can I enhance life, bringing back the mission of Living Cities Earth, how can I enhance life in my own little community? How can I make it better for birds, trees, everything? These, you know, when you connect with life, when you do things for life, and you do it on your local level, you become very happy. First of all, that improves your well-being, and it actually becomes a service for the planet. And you don't need to do anything else, actually. Well, you need to do some things, but this is the most important one. If you connect with life and do little things for it, the rest will follow. If more people feel it like this is what we need to engage in, I think that's to me the evolutionary leadership.
And when you talk to people in different countries, and you mentioned the evolutionary leadership idea, how do they react to it? Do they say, yes, exactly, that's what we need to do, and that's how we will change things? Or they say, well, no, I'm not an evolutionary leader, I don't understand what evolution means. So I understand you have a special, of course, a circle of your acquaintances and colleagues, but still, do you see many people signing up to this idea and becoming active, interconnected evolutionary leadership sort of network? Or how is it going?
I think we maybe need some rebranding, because first of all, also evolution, like all of these things, actually, they point to right things. It's a good name, but it's a very scientific name. And of course, a lot of people don't align with that. It sounds, okay, I am here, what is evolution? It's out there, like how is relevant to me? So for example, people like to talk about happiness much more, right? And happiness, actually, if we think about what happiness is, there are two types of happiness. The like this immediate surge of like enthusiasm or whatever, like I'm happy, like it's a momentary emotion, right? But there is a different kind of happiness, which is what Aristotle called eudaimonia, and it actually means, like, I call it strategic happiness. Strategic happiness is something that is very fundamental. Like, how do you live your life to the fullest? How do you connect with people? How do you self-actualize yourself, and so on and so on. Now, that strategic happiness is, everybody agrees, that's like a purpose of human life. And actually, if we follow that purpose of human life and think how we can live aligned with this strategic happiness, and how we can make other beings happy, can it be part of our condition for happiness? We start to see that actually, if we follow that path, we are improving the world in a way that it's actually enlivening it, making people around us feel better and so on. And it's actually that where probably evolution wants us to go. And so to me, actually, it's interesting thing is we can maybe not necessarily define everyone as evolutionary leader, but or people recognize that they are evolutionary leaders. But if they're serving this, what some people call thrivability, some people call this strategic happiness, if they serve that, they already are kind of evolutionary leaders, but serve in a way that they manifest it in their life. That's really important.
Wow. I'm inspired. How can I become, or anyone who is interested, how can I become a proponent and sort of a practitioner of, as you said, eudaimonic happiness and evolutionary leadership? Any advice?
Well, I think you are, Lev, but and I think most people maybe that will be speaking today are as well. But in general, I would say a few things. First of all, to me, evolutionary leaders are people that are seeing the need to change themselves intentionally. And it's people don't like to change. They change to adapt, but recognizing that change is inevitable, so we need to learn how to change and enjoy it is the first step to become an evolutionary leader. Recognizing that uncertainty is going to be part of our new reality, and we need to enjoy it and find the beauty in things that are coming to us is a shift to become an evolutionary leader. Discovering communities of like-minded people with whom you can do beautiful things is step towards becoming an evolutionary leader. Now, a leader, as Lev, you and I have discussed, and I remember taking an interview from you, of you, like you now interview me. I really like your definition, which I follow, is that leader is not someone who tells people what to do. It's like someone who empowers them to do things. So gives them power to actually act on their own. And I think that's what differentiates between a manager and a leader. Manager kind of goes and threatens and tells, but the leader empowers, so kind of opens up the potential of other people, and that actually allows them to do things. So I think evolutionary leaders start with changing themselves, inviting others to change together in the community, and start seeing the world around them as an opportunity for this growth, endless opportunity for growth, including, of course, the global evolutionary challenges. The evolutionary crisis of our species is just like fractally we can experience that crisis on a personal level. Like we all the time, to evolve, we need some parts of us die, some parts of us are born. We are going through these stages of evolution. And part of it is related to the fact that the economy is changing, the society is changing, there is a climate crisis, everything. But we can be not victims, but active players in that. And we can learn so much in the process. So that, to me, an evolutionary leadership. It doesn't have to be out there on a global scale. It is here.
I just want to add, I love what you're saying. It's all about the invitation. And I can speak for myself. I literally got invited into LCE. It was a literal invitation. And through being invited, I now am learning so much. I am now becoming, I consider an integral part of this community. And so thank you, Pavel. I'm inspired by what I'm hearing from you.
Right. Well, time flies. I would love to talk to you for another hour, but we have about 3-4 minutes left, and then we'll have a 2-minute break, and then an amazing discussion, including several speakers. Pavel and Alexander Laszlo would join, and Marilyn Hamilton and other co-founders and guests of our sessions today. But before we are over, let's touch upon another subject. I know that in all of your personal and professional travels, you came to the point when you are building like a school, right? Sort of a new type of institution to support people in their leadership and evolutionary leadership trajectory. So could you tell me a little bit about the plans or the vision of you and your colleagues? How do you see the school in a year, for example, from now? Is it global? What type of people are coming there? What type of programs it offers? Because I would love to send there my daughter, who is 6 years old. I would love to come there myself, my wife, and everybody else. So please share with us what will be the opportunities in a few months from now.
Yeah, so first I want to say that for me, School of Evolutionary Leadership is like an experiment. It's actually a learning community, first of all. It's not the idea that, you know, there are these teachers that can tell everybody how to become evolutionary leader. It's more like nobody knows how to be an evolutionary leader unless you're engaged in a community of learners. So we are, first of all, a community of learners, and I think that this community of learners will gradually expand. And therefore, we started a club, and we started like a club which is like exactly that community. We started a number of forums. We started a number of programs. At the moment, everything is happening in Russian. And actually, to me, that's an open question whether we want to keep this school multilingual, or we want, because my bigger dream is, I call this project University for the Planet. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I'm working on. And actually, that's just another name for this idea of raising communities of evolutionary leaders around the globe, and all planetizens, helping these leaders to learn, and not only leaders, but everyone, to learn how to live in this reality that is transforming and actually lead the way, right? Mm-hmm. So one way or the other, we expect that in a year from now, there will be either branded by the School of Evolutionary Leadership or branded by University of the Planet. There'll be a range of programs. There'll be a number of hubs, intergenerational learning spaces where people can learn together how to like be the future they want to see. And we also want to create what we call platforms for supporting projects. And we actually, as a University for the Planet, we're also starting with this process of visioning. We want to collectively start envisioning what is that future that we are moving to in, let's say, 30, 50, 100 years from now. What is the future we are creating for our children and for ourselves, maybe? That is like one of our first projects that will start happening in the next few months. And as a School of Evolutionary Leadership, the Russian-speaking one, we want just to kind of learn how to dance with all these kind of questions. And we want to offer a number of programs that are doing this. And all of it is done on the community-driven basis. So it's an evolutionary process. I cannot 100% know what will be the future of School of Evolutionary Leadership in a year from now, because it will evolve. That's the main thing. And right now it evolves to become increasingly community-based, increasingly involving different facets, but I'm sure we will work more with business, with cities, and my main purpose is that we start making impact. It's not only about learning, but it's how we positively change the life of people.
Well, it's very exciting, and I hear from many people when I tell them about the School of Evolutionary Leadership and the Planetary University, they want to collaborate. They say, "Could you connect me with Pavel, because we in India or in other countries, we in United States, etc. We also want to build or learn, right?" So people are interested, and we look forward to the growth and sort of evolution of this idea. And my daughter is definitely waiting. So I also hope that we'll create some programs. I call them online mass education or mass sort of learning programs for teenagers worldwide, because there are so many amazing knowledge, understanding, support we as Living Cities Earth, as our community, could provide to younger generations. We could learn from them, yes, but there is also some things we could share. And I appreciate your time and your ideas. We have a 1-minute break, and we'll continue to the discussion. What is happy city?
Just one last thing. I feel like this is a really good and important catalytic point, and I would like to also say that I've been discussing this with some colleagues, like Learning Planet Institute in France. They're really excited to move forward together on this kind of programs. So let's make sure that within the year that all of that happens.
Sounds great. 30 seconds break, and in 30 seconds we move on to our next session. Thank you very much, Pavel. Thank you everyone who watches us online in YouTube and in recorded version. See you soon. Wow, you have made it. You just watched amazing insights from experts of Living Cities Earth ecosystem. We welcome you to the Living Cities Earth experience and hope that we are going for a long ride as we take care of ourselves, our communities, our cities, and our planet. Thank you and welcome.